And visiting some of the palaces located all around Egypt, because each of these palaces will tell you something about a certain period of time in the Egyptian history. And today we are going to focus more on the Sakakini Palace. Over the phone we have Mr. Samir Abbas, tourism expert and researcher in Egyptian history. Hello.
Hello, good morning, Rasha.
Good morning, sir. So, first of all, I would like to shed the light on the importance of the Sakakini Palace, and what can you tell us about this historical site?
First, I would like to share my personal impression when I have seen the palace for the first time. I was not aware, actually, that was almost 15 years ago, I was not aware about the palace at all. And I was invited by a friend, he's living in the surrounding area, for a dinner in one of the local restaurants there. And once I made it to the square and I looked at the palace at night, I had a very interesting impression. It is out of place. It is as if it is landed from the sky. You know, it has nothing to do with the common surrounding at all. That was my first impression. Like the palace itself, you know, the palace dates back to the 19th century, was like completed after 5 years of building around 1897. So, and to help our audience, you know, actually to imagine, to see what we are talking about, is it was built on 100% European Italian style, with 400 windows, with 300 statues, which is not sure actually most of them is still around anymore. 50 rooms and 5 stories building. So the house was built by Reveals-Al Sakakini. He's a story also, another interesting story. He himself, Reveals-Al Sakakini, is one of the fast growing entrepreneurs in Egypt in that time. That during Egypt, when it became hub, when it became very attractive for entrepreneurs, for immigrants from all over the world, due to the Suez Canal, which has turned Egypt into a global hub in that time. So he was a contractor himself, but he preferred to attract an Italian contractor to replicate a palace, which is seen in Italy. He liked it to build something similar for him and his family in Egypt. So the area was not developed at all in this time. It was a suburb of Cairo. There was a water pond, and he bought it in an auction, or another version that he was given the land as a gift from King Ismail, also known as Sabib Ismail in that time, and which reflect the unique closeness and relationship with King Ismail in the time. And that was for another interesting reason, which is very worth actually telling it today, about how this very humble person, he came to Egypt, which had nothing, from Syria, from Damascus, 15 years old, how he made it to receive the title of Basha, to be the closest to the king, and to be one of the richest entrepreneurs in Egypt at that time.
When we say that this palace can add to the concept of the diversity of Egyptian culture, how can we explain this?
That's very much true. You know, that's very much true, and that was the common of Egyptian culture. Maybe after the collapse of the ancient Egyptian civilization, Egypt became a melting pot, attracting people from all over the world, starting from Alexander, through the Greeks, the Romans, there is the Byzantines, there is many Arabs from different Arabs backgrounds, from different Arab lands, you know, from the Gulf, from Iraq. I'm talking about ancient Iraq, of course, from Syria, from Lebanon, which they were rulers, or they were mercenaries, or they were traders, or even fighters in the army, the Mamluk even, which is from European background. So Egypt, by default, for a very long period, it was a melting pot, and of course, the construction of the Suez Canal, the digging of the Suez Canal, put Egypt in the global route, which is attracted lots of Europeans and lots of entrepreneurs in that time. So Reveals-Al Sakakini, he was only 15 years old when he made it to Egypt, and he's coming from a Syrian background, Damascus, more specific. And he was a very humble worker in the Suez Canal project, and he used to receive his payments was like 3 francs a month in that time, which is almost like very, very humble. But there was an opportunity for him, so there was a big problem which is facing the workers of the Suez canals. In the workers' camps, there was a spread of the plague, which is killing many of them. And the managers at that time, they couldn't solve the problems, and he came with a very simple idea. He said, send me back to Cairo. I will hunt many cats, street cats, from Cairo streets. He loaded them on camels, and he starved them during the way to Suez Canal site, and he let them in the workers' camps to kill and eat all of the mice, that was the reason of the spread of the plague. When King Ismail hears about that the plague disappeared from the workers' camp, he was asking for the reason, and they brought this young Syrian, smart boy or guy, and then he entrusted him. He asked him that to help him with another project. The other project, which is King Ismail had a big problem with, that was the Opera House, which used to be in Ataba Square in Cairo. So the Opera House was supposedly to be finished in the time of the integration of the Suez Canal, but it was with the work speed, with the work techniques in that time, it was impossible. When he was entrusted on the project, when King Ismail entrusted him on the project, and he entrusted a very young man in that time for this project, Reveals-Al Sakakini, he came with another interesting idea of shifts, of 3 working shifts, each shift 8 hours. So he introduced the 24/7 terms into Egypt in that time, and by doing that he tripled the work speed, and he managed to finish the Opera House, which is the first opera house not only in Cairo, in Egypt, and in Middle East and Africa, in the southern part of the Mediterranean, and it operated for the integration of the Suez Canal. That all these efforts attracted attention to him. He became a close friend to King Ismail, his helper, his counselor, and that's how he managed to get these special spots and have the power and have the influence to build a palace like this one.
Well, the design itself, as we can see on the screen, is amazing, and the being inside is completely different. I mean, the gorgeous entrance, we can see many beautiful pieces all around. Could you tell us more information about this palace from inside, and what are the important parts that we need to stop by?
One of the interesting features of this house is it was led by electricity, and that was one of the earliest, or maybe the only actually in this area, to be led by electricity. And to lead it by electricity, there was a cable. A cable has been extended all the way from Sataya, which is power station, and where the power station at that time, to the palace. So the palace itself, it has, apart from the 400 windows and 300 statues, 5 floors, it has 3 axes. And there was a main axis, which is the guest axis, which is the luxury one, leads to the big reception. There was a second axis, a smaller one from the side for the people who lives in the house, for the inhabitants of the house. And there was a third axis for the servants, for the workers who used to work in the palace. So every inch from inside, it was decorated, richly decorated with Baroque style, European Baroque style, with paintings, with nice pillars, with artwork, which is very, very unique artwork. And on the top of that, it has an elevator, which is maybe one of the very few buildings in that time in Egypt which has an elevator.
Right. When we talk about visiting such palaces, we have many palaces that are very, very important all around Egypt. How far it is important? Because whenever we talk about visiting touristic sites or cultural sites, usually we focus on museums. But how far it is important to explore palaces in Egypt?
it's the history of Egypt. Many of the Egyptians, they don't know much about the global importance of Egypt, especially in the 19th century, following the Suez Canals. Many of the Egyptians, they don't know how Egypt and the Egyptian society was melting pot with very mixed of people of different backgrounds, living together in harmony, different backgrounds, different religions as well, different cultures, living in harmony together. And they find their way through and rebuild the strongest economy, not of Egypt throughout the history, and the strongest economy in the Middle East and Africa and in the Mediterranean as well in that time. So, and I'm very glad that you mentioned that it is not the only palace we have. There is many other palaces of buildings actually from this period, and villas and many other like similar, and not only in Cairo, by the way, is in Alexandria, Suez, Ismailia, Qima, Luxor, Aswan. Even in small towns like Isna, there is very unique old houses there. And from my perspective, if I'm allowed to give my thoughts and my ideas how to preserve them, of course, the Ministry of Antiquities, it would be extremely difficult for the Ministry of Antiquities to preserve them all. It will take a long time. Not only it will cost the government a huge amount of cash, which is they might don't have it in the time being with the challenges we have. I think that what I proposed here instead, we can leave some of them to entrepreneurs to renovate them, and when they do the renovation, they do it on the same style. Of course, and that is under the Ministry of Antiquities supervision, and which is other word POT, and leasing these houses, these villas for them for like 20 years more or less. So for them to generate income from it, to preserve and generate income, they can turn it into a boutique hotels, as an example. And there is a very huge market for boutique hotels. There is tourists traveling all over the world attracted by the unique style of boutique hotels throughout Europe, throughout the world to stay in. And I think that we have many buildings can be served this purpose. It can be turned into a 5-star restaurant or even into local museum with the supervision of the Antiquities Department. There is, by the way, that is not something which is completely new in Egypt. There was successful example and stories of such corporations happens, without mentioning names, of course, and the result was extremely successful. And these buildings and these palaces has been very well preserved until now. And I really hope this happens soon before it gets late and we lose very important part of Egyptian heritage and history preserved in these buildings, which is impossible to recover.
Mr. Samir Abbas, tourism expert and researcher in Egyptian history, thank you very much for joining us. I guess with this we come to the end of our breakfast show for today. Thank you all for joining us, and stay tuned for more coming up on Nile TV International.